All right, here we go again. Another YouTube classroom extension for us. And I have to admit, I am a little extra pumped up on this one for two reasons. Number one, my coffee is coming to us in the O'Rourke Family Crest mug. So, we're showing a little extra Irish pride right here. Little sip for the ancestors. And number two, the class on Friday, particularly in the E-Channel class, went really well. And we had a great conversation, but also, because of the direction the conversation went in, a couple of definitions and ideas that I wanted to get into class didn't fit. And I wasn't going to break the rhythm because we had a nice rhythm going, ideas were flying, and that's really what it's all about. So today is really going to try to get us focused on a couple of definitions as we're studying the psychology of Carl Jung and his archetypal theories. So what we really want to make sure I get to you today is those three ideas from Carl Jung: introspection, individuation, and the shadow. And with the shadow, I want to make sure we focus on the idea that we can be confronted by the shadow at any time in our lives, according to Jung, and that confrontation can bring us into performing shadow work, which can help us find greater strengths and maybe untap or unlock some potentials. So let's get into it. Well, number one, the idea of introspection. And I know I said this in class, and but I think it's very important to say, on a certain level, I do feel a bit bad for my students, for people of your generation. Because, man, the world you live in is not one that encourages introspection. So it sure as heck isn't one that teaches you any methods for performing that. Introspection, remember, is kind of looking inward, trying to figure out why I react to things. Why are these thoughts coming up in me? What motivates me? And going a little bit inside to find answers to questions that are plaguing us. Our society really looks outside. What's outside of us? What's in my cell phone? What's on the video I want to watch? What's that person saying? What's going on in this shiny object over here? And everything draws people outward. And the idea of introspection is largely lost. And while I encourage you, on the one hand, to do some introspection in my class, at the same time, I'd be a fool not to recognize that you're seniors, 17 and 18 years old. That's 17 and 18 years of really not being encouraged on a regular basis to do these things. So I get why it might be difficult to perform those tasks. Anyway, so introspection, that inner journey to figure out answers to certain questions that we might have the answer to, and we don't even realize it. Number two is the individuation. And that's the idea there's a process that people go through to try to synchronize their archetypal energies together and to integrate the shadow into their lives. Remember, once again, the idea of psychological constructs are an important part of Jungian analysis, and the idea that we have all types of energy within us, and we can label that energy, for example, warrior energy. And at a mature level, a warrior can be someone who's using that type of energy, an aggressive energy to be sure, but to make that positive difference, to fight for justice, to protect people who need protection. So there's a definite place in the world for that warrior energy. Unfortunately, at the lower levels, the shadow warrior, that aggression is still there. The aggression's at the mature level and the immature level. But with the shadow warrior, the aggression is usually done for self-aggrandizing purposes, to make sure people recognize how powerful I am. So it's all about me, as opposed to I'm going to go fight to protect others. So the shadow warrior can be a force of profound destruction, whereas the mature warrior can be someone who is much more protective. They're both being aggressive, but they've learned to utilize those energies in a better way at the top of that triangle that we talked about. All right. So you have those archetypal energies. You have the attempt to individuate. And then you go through a process of introspection. You will confront the shadow, perhaps do some shadow work. We hope you do. And then in so doing, you integrate the shadow into your life. You're never going to get to throw it out of your life. It's always going to be a part of your psyche, according to Jung. But it doesn't have to be a hidden and a part of your psyche that's putting tremendous pressure on you and making you act in ways perhaps, or driving you to act in ways that are unhealthy for you and those around you. So then we have that shadow. Now, we discussed the shadow in class quite a bit, and I just gave you a little reminder with the shadow warrior of how the shadow is a shadow to everything. But something we didn't get into in class, and I want to emphasize here, is the idea that the shadow can be confronted at any given time during our days. Once again, we talked about a bunch of animated films on Friday in class. I want to kind of bring the shadow to the really real world in this video. So I want to talk about the P3 and me being me in the real world. And as great as that conversation was, once again, if you can't see how we apply some of these thoughts to the real world, then it's just a fun thought exercise, but it stops there. And I never want that to be the case. It should be a very well-rounded approach in the class to what I'm bringing you. So I don't want to get this person's name wrong, so I have to look down at my notes real quick. So we have someone by the name of Molly Tubby, a Jungian analyst. She thought there were 6 main ways in which the real world confronted us and made us feel like a reaction. It was actually perhaps an invitation to do some shadow work. All right, so 3 of those ways were we have exaggerated feelings about things. Honestly, think about the movie Inside Out with the character of disgust, and everything made her so, oh, that's disgusting, oh, that's terrible. That would be exaggerated feelings. Those exaggerated feelings, is it jealousy? Why am I jealous? And then we go on that inner journey to figure out why we're feeling that way. We have negative feedback from others. Other people act like a mirror to us. And we're saying, or we're doing, or we're acting in a particular manner. And those others point out their observations to us, and they're maybe a bit negative. And that could be an invitation to examine our shadow, or we can lash out, get defensive, be in denial, and which is a way to avoid doing shadow work and maturing. Because that's the point of the shadow work, it's the point of individuation, is to mature as we age. We all know people have aged and not matured. And there comes a point that's not impressive anymore. And then there's exaggerated anger, where we get so angry at others because of things they say. Now, I know you might think, but how is exaggerated anger different than exaggerated feelings? And in some level, it's not. The only point is that anger was such a prevalent reaction to the shadow being confronted that Tubby put it into its own category because it's so prevalent and so powerful that it kind of deserves its own category. That's all. All right. So now to the really real world. Here we go. Now, I need a drink of coffee before we get going. And once again, going to draw power from the ancestors. All right. So, as you know, we just had very recently the presidential election. And it's a great opportunity to apply a little confrontation with the shadow for us right here. Obviously, at this point, we know that the president-elect is Donald Trump. So we have President-elect Trump. And the Democrats are clearly unhappy about this. Clearly unhappy about this. All right. What I want to do is share with you 4 quotes from Democrats as they were trying to kind of figure out or put their finger on how come Vice President Harris was so soundly defeated in the Electoral College and lost the popular vote as well. So let me just read those to you. I don't want to get them wrong, so I'm going to grab the notebook here. All right. Our first quote comes to us from a U.S. Representative, Jamal Bowman. He's a Democrat from New York. And something he said was, Democrats cannot fall to elitism. He's concerned that the Democratic Party is becoming too elitist, too interested in moneyed people and too interested in well-educated people. Like everything has a certain snobbery to it, a certain level of appealing to the wealthy or this educated class. And so, once again, U.S. Representative Bowman says Democrats cannot fall to elitism. So that's his concern. He says this. Next, we have Senator Bernie Sanders, an independent from Vermont. He tends to work closer with the Democratic Party than the Republican Party, just to be clear. But he says the Democratic Party has abandoned working class people. First it was white working class, and now Latino and black. Bernie Sanders, quite frankly, has made a career out of championing working class causes. That's his kind of reason to be in politics. And he's looking at this election and going, Democrats had a problem, lost the working class, lost white working class people, and now Democrats are in the process of losing Latino and black working class people. That's Senator Sanders' take on things. So I turned the page, and this is simply a letter to the editor of the LA Times. An 81-year-old man named Mark Jansen sent a letter to the editor. He's been a Democrat since not 18, Jesus, that'd make him really old. 1968. And he said he is finding it more difficult to remain with the Democratic Party. And the reason for that is, and I quote, there's a willful blindness that we have become the party of well-educated elite, and we have left the multicultural working class behind. So Mark Jansen, who once again is a citizen like you and I, kind of combined Sanders and Bowman's thoughts there in what he said. The Democrats becoming a party of well-educated elites and leaving behind the working class. And lastly, we have, let me just say this too. I'm sorry, I'm going to make sure you get Mark Jansen's words incorrectly. He also accused Democratic leaders of congratulating each other for their moral superiority. And once again, that's that idea of moral superiority. I'm better than you. I know better than you. Just do what I say and you'll be fine because I'm morally superior to you. And Mark Jansen, once again, 81-year-old man from Los Angeles, I assume, because he wrote the letter to the LA Times. This is his take as a lifelong Democrat. And then I have James Carville here. James Carville is a former advisor to Bill Clinton. So he's been a professional politician for the Democrats for a long, long time. And one of the things that he says is the Democratic Party is obsessed with identitarianism. I think that's a word Carville coined himself. Identitarianism, meaning that the Democratic Party has made identity more important than humanity. Identity more important than humanity. I would translate that into meaning basically that you don't look at people and you think, oh, there's another human being. A human being is suffering. What can we do for them? Identitarianism, identity more important than humanity, from James Carville would mean, oh, you're suffering, but you have the right identity for me to be compassionate to you or not. So it's almost like there's a strata of identity that is more important than humanity. And that's James Carville's take on things. All right, so you had these four takes. I don't know. Hey, you know what? Maybe you, but it might be a little experiment you can do. You can watch this video with a parent, particularly if they're a member of the Democratic Party, and see how they react to what was just read to you. But the bottom line is, all of those words could be invitations to perform shadow work, because once again, they are being critical of someone, the Democrats. A Democrat hears that and goes, we're not elitist, and they quickly shut that down. No, not us. So they're angrily, maybe perhaps even rejecting the idea. We're not elitist. Trump's a billionaire. And hey, you know what? Trump is a billionaire. But the statement wasn't made about Trump. The statement was made, we lost. We want to win. I want to help you. I'm worried this is what's happening. And so if someone rejects it right away, from a Jungian standpoint, could that be something that's poking at the shadow, and it's frightening to go down into darkness? And so instead of going, geez, are we that way? That's a terrible thought. We shouldn't. And really getting reflective, maybe talk to someone else about it, and taking those words seriously, you just out of hand, reject. Now, the shadow is definitely a frightful place. Let me give you 2 pop culture examples of the shadow that I think are hopefully kind of well known. One of them, because I'm old, I'm going to go with old Luke Skywalker going into the cave in Dagobah. And once again, Luke goes down into the cave, and when he goes down into the cave, he confronts a vision of Darth Vader. They fight with their lightsabers, and in the end, Luke defeats Vader, but when Vader's mask falls off, it has Luke's face under the mask. So he goes into the shadow, and he sees that he could become something he doesn't want to be, Darth Vader. Democrats don't want to become something like elitists. So they reject that idea, let's say, once again, going back to that part of it. Or are they Luke Skywalker, and you have to confront that and go, are we that? Are we becoming that? Remember, Luke actually saw his face in under Vader's helmet, as if to say, you're already on your way to becoming that. And Luke, of course, changes the trajectory of his journey, his hero's journey, but that shadow vision is part of his journey. Simba goes on really 2 quests into the shadow in The Lion King. Yeah, we're back to The Lion King because all the answers are in The Lion King. Here we go. Simba, once again, he goes to that elephant graveyard. And so he's in the elephant graveyard, which is in the shadow realm. It's outside the realm of his father, outside the realm of his father's kingdom. And he goes in there and he confronts things that he's afraid of and that can be terrifying to him. He confronts the fact that he's really not ready he's not strong enough yet to fight off hyenas. That there are places that are too dangerous for him to go. He thought he was ready to be this grand warrior, and really going into the elephant graveyard showed him, hey, you got a little spunk, kid. You scratched one of him in the face. But if Mufasa hadn't showed up, you would have been killed by the hyenas. And Nala would have been killed as well. So there's a huge risk that was taken there that would not have worked out very well if Mufasa doesn't show up. Number 2, once again, Simba goes into under the roots of the world tree with Rafiki. And it's dark, there's music playing, it's a little disorienting for Simba. And then he confronts the vision of his father, who confronts him with the idea that you've forgotten me, so you've forgotten who you are. And and so he realizes that no, you're living half a life here. You're not all you. You're a man child, Simba. You're not maturing. You're not becoming worthy of being the king of the Pride Lands, and because of that, the Pride Lands are suffering. How many people suffer because immature adults make bad decisions or lead us down bad paths? So the idea of maturing ought not to be boring to you. In some ways, it ought to be liberating to you, because it means you're increasingly becoming ready to make good decisions. Help your community, help your family, be there for people instead of lying around the Kuna Matata, which in essence for Simba means don't do a thing and don't help anything while the Pride Land goes to hell. So yeah, maturing is a fine thing if you want to be someone who can be of service to those you love. If you don't want to be of service to those you love, yeah, don't mature, but see how those relationships go. It might not go the way you want it. So once again, the call went out to Democrats from 4 sources. I only gave you 4, but how do they react to that? And let me give you an example of someone who reacted to that. There's a representative, Representative Cortez. She goes by AOC, and Representative Cortez put out. She's a big social media person. She's a younger Democrat, and she was surprised, I believe, to learn that, a lot of people in my district voted for me, Cortez, to go back to Congress, but they also voted for Trump, the Republican, to become president. What the heck was going on? I'm a Democrat. You voted for me. But rather than scold or say anything, she put onto her, I was going to say Twitter. I think it's called X now. I don't have an account. The X, the former Twitter, she was asking questions of other people in her district. Oh, why'd you do this? What motivated you? She wanted to know. She wanted to hear from them. On some level, and I would give her credit for this, AOC was willing to listen to the complaints, the invitation from a Jungian standpoint to face the shadow and go, oh, are we becoming this? Are we becoming something that certain types of people, particularly, once again, using the quotes here, working class people, are a little bit repulsed by? And so she's searching for answers, and that's laudable. That's dare I say noble. So hey, good for her for doing that. But that's an example of someone, I would say, who's doing the shadow work. They heard something they don't like, and or they saw something they don't like for her, the president gets elected, and she goes, what do I need to learn? How do I help strengthen my people, the Democrats? And so I would say, in some level, we can label that as her doing some shadow work, which, once again, given what we're studying, is so we're able to see it a little bit in the real world using this Jungian idea. So I would just encourage you to remember those words, those definitions. We really didn't talk about it in class at all because we've been so wonderfully distracted by other great conversations. So I'm very happy to have put this out for you tonight. It's necessary. It's necessary. And honest self-examination is always a good thing. And if it hurts a little bit, that's okay too. Because nobody's perfect, once again. Nobody's perfect. But you don't improve by pretending to be perfect. So let me just end this with that message that if you're doing no reflection, if you're thinking about something that's going on, and you feel a little bit down on yourself, don't wallow in it. Figure out why. And that's when you can make real improvements and get better at whatever it is you're striving to do with your lives. So on that note, have a good night. I will see you in class next week, and we will continue our journey into Jungian psychology. Be well, everybody.